Well, Beckett is a town in Massachusetts where I now live. I live outside of Beckett, but it's a very important place for me in terms of my own mythology. I would say that it's the town where when I was growing up, my family had a country house, a cabin in the woods. So it's where I used to go to when I was a child. It's also where now I go and swim in the lakes in Beckett, and I cross-country ski there. It's also where I've met my partner, or it's where her family's from. So there's all these deep associations with the place. And I thought it would be a great backdrop to create various bodies of work, two bodies of work. One is the more recent body of work, Cathedral of the Pines, and the other is an earlier body of work that was actually made in on my parents' property, and those are the Firefly pictures. So when it came time when we thought of this idea of putting these two pictures together, it made a lot of sense to call them the Beckett pictures, because I think it somehow brings together the idea of place and an idea of a fictional world that kind of hovers over a real life place. Two bodies of work have kind of overlapping themes, and they both come out of periods in my life where there was like life changes, and there's always an interesting relationship between life and art, and particularly these two bodies of work. I think that's particularly relevant or evident in the pictures themselves. The Firefly pictures were made originally in the mid-90s after the end of my first marriage, and I left New York and spent a summer photographing fireflies on my parents' property. And I made them over the course of a few months, photographing every single night in the evenings. And at the end of the summer, I developed all the film, and I looked at the contacts, and for some reason I couldn't really deal with the work, so I put it in a box, and then it remained in a box for over 10 years. And then 10 years later, I looked at these pictures and I thought they were just really beautiful and powerful. So I then printed them for the first time in, I forget exactly what year, it's like 2000, you would know better, 2000 and, what is it? 2006. It was just similar, it was the end of my second marriage, so I don't know what that says about me, but, and that's when I left New York and moved into a church and in Great Barrington in Massachusetts. And at that period, my life was really in chaos, and I began sort of religiously walking on the Appalachian Trail and doing these long distance swims in Beckett. And then maybe a year later, Julianne and I were cross-country skiing in Beckett again, deep in the woods, and came across this small little trail, and there was a sign that said Cathedral of the Pines. That was the name of the trail. And I immediately thought, well, that's going to be the next body of work, and that's the title of the next group of pictures. And then from that period, it took about 3 years to produce this body of Cathedral of the Pines, which all take place on location in Beckett, either in homes or in the landscape. That particular picture was made, and that's obviously Julianne, who is appears throughout the pictures and was involved in the whole production of the Cathedral of the Pines. This was actually a picture that was made in her family's home, in the home that she grew up in a shed that's right next to the house. And we made a series of pictures in that home, and when I was location scouting, I just loved that view through the shed out into the apple tree in the back. And as usually the case is, variations of an images come up and different ideas, and then somehow this was the final image of Julianne sort of framed by the door with this like small configuration of flowers on the ground. And you know, I don't know exactly what the picture means, but I think it's evocative and beautiful image, and place. There's like all the Cathedral of the Pines pictures. The pictures are in contrast to the cathedral. Beneath the Roses, they're quieter in tone. There's less happening. They're very quiet. But all the pictures, in one way or another, have a kind of contemplative relationship to nature and to using framing devices like doorways and windows to describe relationships between domestic life and the natural world. Yes.